Thank you, Peter, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here and tell our story. As Peter says, we're just a regular business. We're not a multinational or anything such as that. We're a mid-cap company, turnover of just over £50 million, employ 420 people. We're based on the east coast of England, a place called Southwold in Suffolk, which is right on the Norfolk-Suffolk border. And it's about as far east as you can get in the UK without tipping into the North Sea. And it's the first place in the UK where the sun comes up in the morning. So we have a sunny disposition, as it were. So I'm going to tell you our story, really. Our story, we arrived at this place not through a lean route, but by following a set of organisational values, a set of behaviours within the organisation. And that brought us to a place. That coincided, that implementation of those values coincided with a renewal of our infrastructure and we looked at what was going on in our supply chain. So I'm just going to kick on with the story. If something stops you and occurs to you as I'm going through it, stop me and buy one. I'm happy to take questions as I go through. If not, we'll do something at the end. All right. So this is a product, really, and I'll start with this kind of product story because this product story was a celebration of the infrastructure investments that we made. In 2006, we invested in a new distribution centre, and I'll talk about that. In 2007, we renewed our brewery, and the journey has continued. And I've got something to talk about that we done 2010, and we're just implementing now. But this was a celebration, really, of those infrastructure investments we made, and we thought, and we worked with Tesco to co-create this product. And that was to fill their green basket of goods. What it was for us is that it was quite transformational in the relationship with Tesco. If you go to the premium bottled ale section in a Tesco or a Sainsbury's or a Waitrose or any supermarket chain, there are about 500 products in there. It's noisy, everybody's competing for space, and actually beer is often seen as a commodity product, and supermarkets do use the pricing of beer to attract consumers into their premises. What this has done, however, has transformed our relationship with Tesco, and we've become much more of an added value supplier and seen as an innovator. So I'll talk about this story as we go through, but this beer, our brewery is based on East Green. This beer is, all the steps in the supply chain have led to it for us to reduce all the carbon that's emitted in the supply chain. I won't talk about climate change other than to say we are right on the East Coast. We see the rise and fall of the North Sea every day. When that coincides with a spring tide and a North Sea surge, actually some of our pubs get flooded. The beach huts on Southwold seafront get washed away. We can't get our lorries out of the distribution centre, so we live with the elements. We are on the edge of the elements. And closer to home, and I talked about this earlier, we defined a set of values, and one of those values was around the concern for the environment. And that's not only the natural environment, but it is the built environment, and it's also the social environment, because we do make a product that can be mood changing, so we have to pay due regard to that as well. And we've got two values here. One is around sustainability, but not just sustainability in the sense of let's do things in a sustainable way, but actually what we're trying to do here is build a sustainable business model. Adnams has been around since 1872. It is a listed outfit. We've got the letters PLC behind our name, but we also have some big blocks of shareholders, and it's important to convince them that this was the right move to make. And actually, the new corporate governance code, if people have looked at that, it talks about directors having to pay due regard to the long term, and that's something that we look to do within our business model. And in terms of the environment, we look to manage our impact on that positively, and I'll talk some more about that. These two bits that you can see here are our latest baby that we're installing, and I'll talk some more about that later on. The beer mat on the left is depicting a cow in a shed, because we talk about our latest innovation as a big cow's stomach, and I'll explain a mechanical cow's stomach, and I'll explain what's going on there, and it's a good job I'm doing it after the food rather than before. So what did we do in bringing this beer, and actually now we're looking at all of our beers to market? Well, Adnams supports something like 40 farms locally around it, and we worked with 12 of the farms closest to our maltsters, and so that we cut down on transportation to our maltsters. We talked to the people who malted our barley and said, look, what we want to do is manage down the emissions in this process, and we very lightly roasted the barley, and we worked with a maltster who are implementing a number of environmental initiatives themselves. We then ran it through our brewery, and I'll talk about our brewery. Our new brewery came on stream in 2007. I think I can still say it's one of the most energy efficient in Europe, and I'll talk some more about that in a moment. We also looked at the actual package, the glass that the beer sits in, and we went back to our bottle manufacturer OI and said we can do better here. And by looking at our bottle, redesigning our bottle, we were able to take 33% out of the weight of the glass bottle. What does that do? By far, and you can go on our website and you can actually look at the underlying calculations here. These weren't done by us. We worked with the School of Environmental Sciences at the University of East Anglia. We took 33% out of the weight of the glass bottle. And by far the biggest carbon emitting part of the process is blowing glass. What did that enable us to do? One, it enabled us to move more bottles on the back of a lorry because it's lighter, and secondly, we took carbon out of the atmosphere because we had a lighter bottle. It was equivalent to taking all of our staff journeys to work and all of our salesmen's cars off the road. So around 700 tonnes of CO2 was saved by just that one initiative. Those are our lorries there, but actually we have our bottling done in the Midlands. We've decided to do that because bottling equipment is very expensive. We have a partner in the Midlands who has some modern equipment, but more importantly, they're also adjacent, just off the M1, adjacent to where a number of supermarket RDCs are. So we work with them, making sure that we take full loads into RDCs. We then hand it over to Tesco, and Tesco do what they wish with it. Hopefully it's put it in every one of their stores and put it on a gondola end and what have you. Anyway, we measured that whole process, and at the end of that process there were something like 145 grams of CO2 per bottle produced, still outstanding at the end. That's the equivalent to about a kilometre in a sort of 3 Series BMW or something like that. And at that stage we offset it with a gold standard offset scheme. However, we vowed at the time we did this to come back to this process and look at ways of still further improving that. And I'll come on to that in a little while. Why can we do this, and what gives us the right to be able to do these things? And I think through our behaviour as an organisation, our commitment to doing these things, and I think there's an element of thought leadership in this. So the building on your right, which you can barely see, and it's supposed to be like that because we wanted to cut down on the sort of visual pollution and light pollution of having a distribution centre in an area of outstanding natural beauty. We actually built the centre 7 metres down in a disused gravel working, so it's a brownfield site. And it's got some ground-breaking features. So putting it 7 metres down initially gives some thermal stability. We then worked with the University of Bath to bring to market a technology called, it's now being marketed as hemcrete, but this building is made out of lime hemp blocks, and so therefore it's sequestered lots and lots of carbon into it. There is about 500 to 600 tons of carbon sequestered into the blocks that this building is built with. These blocks were used in Europe, mainland Europe, many, many years ago, and we kind of, like many of these things, we sort of lost the knowledge that we had, and actually all we were doing was going back and saying we can do some of this stuff with this technology. So we invested about £100,000 with the University of Bath to bring this block to market, and it has tremendous thermal properties. The roof is supported, was the largest single span glued laminated beams in the UK, 90 metres from end to end. There may be bigger ones now, and the wood for those came from sustainable forestry in Scandinavia. On the roof is an acre and a half on the main distribution centre, then we have a separate smaller building. Combined there's nearly 2 acres of sedum on the roof, so actually that is extracting carbon out of the atmosphere. And the building, we capture all of the rainwater, take that rainwater off to 3 levels of reed bed, filter it, bring it back to the building for staff shower facilities, vehicle washing, and to flush the loos. We put the roof on this building in July 2006, and it feels a long time ago now, but it was a very, very hot July. Temperatures often high 20s, 30 degrees. So the sort of inner workings of the building got quite hot. So for about a month afterwards, we had staff coming in at night and opening airlock doors that exist on either end and on one side of it to get the temperature down. The optimal temperature for storing the beer that we make is 13 degrees centigrade. Once we got the shed down to 13 degrees centigrade, we shut the airlock doors, shut the side doors, and irrespective of whether it's -10 outside or +25 or 30, this has stayed within 13 to 14 degrees since it was August 2006, without any artificial heating or cooling. So it is a big thermos flask, effectively. And it's 50% more energy efficient per square metre than the building that we vacated. The price premium on doing this was about between 15 and 20%. All of these investments that we've made, however, have been based on 2 things. One is, when we were looking at our business case, we factored in that our view was that the cost of fossil fuels is going to go one way. And the other thing that we factored in is that the polluter is going to pay in some way in future. The next stage of doing that, and we had to do this in some sort of order, was to renew our brewery, and that's our head brewer coming down the stairs in the middle there. There's a lot of stainless steel. This is a German brewery bought in 2007 from a company called Huppmann. It's a state-of-the-art facility. If you go to a brewing town, you usually see lots of steam coming out of chimneys, and you can smell a wonderful smell of hops. Those are lovely, they're atmospheric, they're nice, but actually that's energy being vented to the atmosphere. What we do is capture that heat, and we store that in heat retention tanks, because brewing beer is really quite resource and energy is really quite a resource and energy intensive activity. It's a lot about boiling water. So we use that heat that we've captured to boil the next brew that's coming through. From a CO2 point of view, it's about 230 to 250 tons of CO2 per annum, better than any other brewery in the UK or Europe. And it's got real low water use. Some of the worst offenders in the UK use something like 15 pints of water to make 1 pint of beer, and the industry average is between 6 and 8 pints to make 1 pint of beer. In this brewery we've got it down to 3.1 pints per pint of beer, and by adjusting our evaporation, and we're working on that at the moment, we'll get that down below 3, I'm certain. And then, you know, we continue to look at ways, and I've already talked about the bottle lightweighting, and we lightweighted that right across all of our range. And what was really good about this, because it's not a competitive area, you know, actually lightweight bottle, but everybody else who puts beer in bottles followed us and took weight out of their bottles. So not only did we save the 500, 600, 700 tonnes per annum, but actually there was a saving right across the industry because we'd had this sort of thought leadership around that. So we think that gives us the credentials to do the sorts of things that we're doing and talk about these things. So Michael Porter, who's a professor of corporate strategy, I think at Harvard still, will talk about moving corporate responsibility from a defensive box ticking exercise to an offensive corporate strategy. And that's what we're trying to do here. And at the heart of that is a set of behaviours, our values, our organisational code. We invest significantly in our leadership team and in developing our leadership team and getting the understanding of what we're trying to do throughout our organisation. We talk widely to stakeholders. In fact, we'll talk to anyone who will listen. You know, actually I'm here today because I think this is a reasonable story to tell. And we sort of tell the whole story really through our brand and our brand imagery. That's the sort of loud hailer through which we tell the story. Where all those rings intersect is where the sustainable competitive advantage lies for us. And where we're able to tell the story directly to our customers, where we're able to touch our customers. And this stuff feeds right across into the behaviours and customer service levels that we can deliver well. And that's proven by some of the business results that we've got. And what are those business results? Well, we've more than doubled our beer volumes since 1997. That's in a market that continually declines. Last year declined by 8.1%. 2008 was difficult for us because we were launching a new part of our business and some of our big customers hit the buffers. But we were still able to maintain our dividend to our shareholders and maintain profit through that, and that's rebounded in 2009. We've continued to invest in our infrastructure and in our brand, and I'll come on to some of the infrastructure investments that we've continued to make. And in our retail business, our pubs are performing, our hotels are doing well. We've got shops that are the new concept I talked about. They're off to a great start. And we've just been the first UK brewer to put a distillery as well on the side of its operation. So we're quietly confident but not complacent about the future. And as I've said, what we've tried to do is embed this. We don't actually talk about corporate responsibility or corporate social responsibility. I've got the initials CR there. But my view is if you actually have to use sort of initials, if you have to produce a separate corporate sustainability report or a corporate social responsibility report, you actually don't really get it. What you should be doing is looking to embed these things in your business and make it the way that you do business. So some of the things, the picture of the lady smiling with the blankets is an example of staff engagement. We've made these big infrastructure investments, and they're very, very important. But more important, really, is the level of staff engagement we've got. That lady's got some blankets there that she's talking to somebody about. This was an idea that our staff came up with. We've got pubs, we've got hotels, we've got outside areas. When it gets cool in the evenings, the response of a business such as ours often is to wheel out patio heaters. These things are expensive to run. These things are bad for the atmosphere. Our staff went on the internet, found a textile supplier, talked to them about offcuts from their process, had them made into blankets and bought the lot and put our logo on them. And when our customers get cold in the evenings now, our staff go out and wrap them in blankets. And that's more of a metaphor for the way in which we like to look after our customers. And that's an example of embedding this sort of thing. And in that regard, our last staff opinion survey, we across the 420 staff, We got an 88% response rate, 91% of people of that 88% saying they're proud or very proud to work for us. Over 90% saying they're very clear about what is required from them. So this is feeding through the organisation. The next step on our journey is our mechanical cow stomach. And this is a process called anaerobic digestion. And one of my visions is to create what academics refer to as an industrial ecology, where waste from one part of the process becomes an energy source for the next part of the process. Now, from brewing beer and running pubs and hotels and shops, actually we have waste product. We have spent grains, we have a product called ullage, which is from the bottom of fermentation vessels in the brewing process. We have food waste from our pubs and our hotels. What we do is tanker that up to our distribution centre site, and we put that into a process called anaerobic digestion. Anaerobic digestion, as you can see on the cow, food goes in one way, it heats up, it has a lot of microbes and bacteria works on it in the stomach, and it produces gas, just the way in which we do if we eat Heinz baked beans. And that gas is biomethane. We, at the moment, now clean that biomethane up. We are, at the moment, injecting it back to the grid. But our plan is, and this year we will buy our first 2 biomethane commercial vehicles. And what we're going to use is the biomethane that's produced from our waste processes to fuel our commercial vehicle fleet. And that will take 30% out of our carbon footprint when we manage to get all of our commercial vehicle fleet replaced over the cycle of about the next 4 or 5 years. So that's a good step forward. And what we're putting behind that is a 0.5 megawatt solar array that will provide all the electricity for our data center and to run the anaerobic digestion. And it will have some that will feed back into the grid. So this is the next step on our journey, as it were, on an industrial ecology. And the final step in that is, if I can go back to the 40 farms that I talked about early on, is as a byproduct from anaerobic digestion, there's 2 byproducts. One is called leachate, one is called digestate, and these are rich in nutrients. They're like baby bio on steroids. There is some legislation at the moment that you can't put it on the land throughout the year. You can only put it on at certain times, but that's likely to change, and we will then give that byproduct back to our farms, our 40 farms that we support, to actually ensure the barley grows, and they'll have a free organic fertilizer, and that sort of closes the loop on that system. So from that regard, we were the Carbon Trust Carbon Innovator of the Year in 2007. We won the Queen's Award for Sustainable Development in 2006. There's a number of other ones there. This one here I'm most proud of, though, and that's this year we've been voted the Brewery of the Year by the Good Pub Guide. And that's our story. Thank you.